So a couple of people have asked how I found this property, how I found Dream Factory. And it was actually quite an accident. So I'm going to step back and give you a little bit of a history, my history, because it'll lead into what actually happened here. So I've been a fan of cartoons and comic books my entire life. In fact, cartoonists are actually my childhood heroes, not sports stars or anyone else. You know, I had thousands of comic books, and I owned every Fawcett paperback, if you're old enough to remember those. They're the tiny paperback books of Peanuts and Dennis the Menace and BC, Wizard of Id, Marmaduke, Beetle Bailey, and the others. I bought every one of them that I could get my hands on. And I built a collection of over 7,000 comic books. Well, back in the 90s, I was a member of the International Museum of Cartoon Art. It's actually something I wish I had gotten into earlier in my life. I didn't even know it existed. So once I found out about it, and that's by the Walker family, Mort Walker and his family put that together. It used to be up in upstate New York. And in the late 90s, they moved it down to Boca Raton in Meisner Park. And since I live in Orlando, the trip to Boca was only about 2.5 to 3 hours long.
So Mark said to me, let's go to Boca Raton. There's this amazing cartoon art museum. And I said, yeah, let's go. I love cartoon art, love Boca Raton. So we go on down.
So we go down there and we walk in. It's a beautiful place.
And I'm thinking, oh, maybe we'll spend an hour here. It wasn't that big. So we go inside, and right away, the curator of the museum comes up to us and says, oh, what do you do?
The curator there wasn't a whole lot of people, asked what I did. And so when I explained that I was a story artist and I produced animation, she got all excited. She goes, oh my God, we have a small art studio based here at the museum. And I was like, what do you mean based at the museum? She goes, well, in the middle of the museum, there's this kind of open area that could be rented, and there's a gentleman, Ed Kang, from Canada, had rented space from them, and she offered to introduce me to Ed.
So Mark goes off with her because that someone was an animator, and Mark is an animator, so he went off with her and said, I'll meet up with you in a few minutes. So I figured, great. So I wander around the museum, and it was great art, very entertaining. But I saw everything in about 30 minutes at the most.
And I ended up never seeing the museum. I never walked through because once the curator took me back to meet Ed, we hit it off instantly, and he had so much really cool art that he was doing. We just got into talking, and I spent most of the day with him.
So I circle around back to Mark, and he's yak, 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 right, with Ed.
So he had a really small area, lots of cool art, and he was pulling out different things, and he showed me this comic book that he was working on called Dream Factory. Now, it was unfinished. It was just black and white sketches. He hadn't done a whole lot, but the characters were really freaking cool, and especially the Dremgar, these dragon warriors who guard the Dream Factory. Well, we kept going on, and he told me the story, and it was really cool. He hadn't really fleshed it out much, but I just loved the whole concept of this factory where dreams are made. So I asked him if I could take copies of a couple of these pages back to my house so I could read through them and show them to my wife. And he said, sure. So he made a couple of copies for me. I wish I had them. Believe it or not, I can't find those. I wanted to share them with you, but I can at least show you some of the original art. I do have some of the original character art that he had done that caught my attention. So once we got back home, Jeannie and I talked about it, and I shared with her what the whole story was, and we started getting more excited about it and coming up with ideas of our own on how to enhance it and what we could add to it. And we thought, you know, we could turn this into a really cool TV series. And Jeannie had just left Nickelodeon just a few years before this. I had left Nick probably in 94, 95, somewhere around there, to work with Spielberg on Sequest. But we'd done a lot of work in kids TV. So I thought, well, let's see if Ed would be interested in this, the creator. So what were your thoughts when we first called you? Said, dude, let's turn this into a TV series. What do you think?
Well, I'll tell you a story. When you go to animation school and the first day, they ask the question sort of, why are you here? Like, why are you in animation school? people were saying answers like, "Oh, I saw Toy Story and I want to do 3D animation, all those things." My response was, I'm here because someday I'm going to have a Saturday morning cartoon. And there were these people in the class that just kind of, snickered at me. And so really when you approached me, it was like, man, this is the fulfillment of a dream. Literally. It was like, okay, this is where it's all going to go. I knew I wanted to get there. I just didn't know how back at that time. So having someone with your background and experience to come approach me, it's kind of like, I don't know, back then getting on American Idol or something like that, right? It's just like everybody dreams, well, anybody who's creating something, a story or a comic book, dreams or imagines that moment where they get this opportunity. And so for me, it was just, I felt gratitude. I felt humbled. It was just really awesome. I was excited, like ecstatic just for that opportunity. It was great.
So we offered him an option agreement. Now, if you're not familiar with that, and I'll get into the specifics of what an option is in our next video, and he was up for it. So we sent him the contract, he signed it, we sent him a check. We ended up bringing Ed out to the studio. So we'll go over the details on that on yet another blog. There's so much I'm going to be sharing with you guys on this. So working on this has really been a labor of love. I mentioned that in the first video, and I'm really excited that we're about to move into production on a short on this. But here's one of the cool things. Ed is still working with us on this pre-production. So right now, as I'm recording this, he's refining some of the designs and drawing the turnarounds for the characters so that we could have the crew start building all the assets. So make sure that you check out all the other videos in this blog and post below any other questions that you've got, whether you have them for me or for Ed or anyone else that's part of our production. And I'll answer everything that I can on this. So hope you're enjoying this, and stay tuned for the next one.